This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Bruschi.
We are talking with Dr. John Delatorre, licensed psychologist. I want to get into something beyond just the crime itself. Let's talk for a little bit about the death penalty, and if it's going to be on the table here, let's assume that it will be, and about the victims themselves. I've had many conversations with people who lean both ways on this, and it's not a pro-death penalty thing or an anti-death penalty thing. It's more so about the mental well-being of the survivors, of the victims, of the families that have to continue on with life. And very often it seems that when it is a death penalty case, once they're found guilty and they're on death row, it's a much more invasive, difficult time forward for the survivors because there's so many appeals. It continues to go on for many, many, many years, and they're not able to kind of find some silence and find some peace on this, where if it were someone that's just locked away for the rest of their lives without parole. A case like this, obviously it comes down to what the victims may want. I've heard many say, I really want a death penalty for whoever it was, to begin with. Years later, they almost wish it was just a life sentence. Can you speak to that at all, about the impact on the victims, whether or not it could be a death penalty versus life in prison with no parole?
I do think it's going to end up being a death penalty case. I think really there are times when a society comes together and decides that an individual has committed a crime so heinous against that society that that person can no longer be present in that society at all. When it comes to how should the victims feel when it comes to like the death penalty itself, whatever it is that they feel, it's perfectly fine.
Sure.
Right. And I'm not going to judge someone for saying, no, this person needs to be put to death. And I'm certainly not going to judge someone for saying, no, I need this person alive, for whatever reason that they say that they want the person dead or they want the person remained alive. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that it's not in their hands. Yeah. Right. There's a reason why we don't have the victims determining what the sentence will be. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the most important part for us to keep clear, which is these individuals, the victims' families in this case, are going to be flooded with emotions. There's going to be ebbs and flows for how they're feeling, how vulnerable they're feeling, how angry, how sad. There's going to be ebbs and flows throughout the rest of their life. And so we don't want to place some undue burden onto them, so that they can grieve however it is that they need to grieve. The burden is going to be placed on another group of individuals for them to decide whether or not the crimes committed by Bryan Kohberger, if he's found guilty, mm-hmm. rise to the level of the death penalty. But I do think the prosecutors in this case have a strong case to put that on the table, to put death penalty on the table.
It's a difficult one because you want justice to be served. And if I were in the shoes of Steve Gonsalves or someone, and I've obviously never been there, so it's very hard to completely put myself there, but the best I can, I would want the death penalty right now. That would be what would be going through my mind. You certainly want justice for whoever has killed your daughter. In the long term, though, if you're to look at the long term and what's going to be best for your own mental health, and it's hard to predict because they have not been into that situation yet of years and years of appeals and having to maybe go testify again or have your voice heard over and over. What is most beneficial for them, for their own mental health going forward, having to deal with all of those things while seeking death as justice versus he's locked away, there's not going to be anything else. There's court's over. He's not going to get another chance at an appeal. And then just trying to move forward. Probably a very personal decision, though, I would think.
I think it's a very personal decision. But one thing that I would recommend is that they stay away from the trial. They stay away from all the media coverage, that they stay away from it, because what they're going to, the most likely outcome for being involved in this, right? Whether you're sitting there every single day in the trial, or you're watching, updates about the trial every single day, the most likely emotion that you're going to experience is anger. The second most is probably going to be sadness. And that's fine, because anger and sadness are normal human emotions, but they can also erode your overall self-esteem, and it can make it very difficult for you to move forward with your grief if you're constantly surrounded by the memories and the wants and the wishes and everything that you had thought your life was going to be. If you're surrounded by the devastation of all of that day in and day out, it can put roadblocks in front of you that don't actually need to be there. So I understand that they're going to want to be there, but that doesn't mean that they have to be there. And I understand that they think that that they need to be there for justice to be served, but there's a reason why it's the state that does it, right? There's a reason why in these circumstances, in criminal cases, it's the state that is the plaintiff in the case and not the victims. So the victims can do whatever it is that they need to do in order to heal. And it's not necessarily that the onus is on them to prove the case, that it's not on the victim, it's on the state. And so I would recommend that they stop, right? That they go to whatever therapist or counselor site, whoever they need to go see, religious figure, whoever it is that they need to go see. And they just kind of they disconnect from the circus that is going to be this case.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Dr. John Delatorre, thank you so much for your insight. Always appreciate having you on to get that every week here on the podcast. If you guys like the show and you'd like an ad-free experience from not only this podcast, but all of the podcasts in the True Crime Today family, you can get that through Apple Podcasts. Just go to our podcast page and you'll see the option to get everything ad-free. You get access to all of our podcasts. We're creating new ones all the time that you can binge away on without commercials, even get some in advance. Check it out there on Apple Podcasts. It's less than $5 a month, and you get access to all of that right away. Check it out. Even try it for 3 days free. We do greatly appreciate that support. My name's Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.